You've sacrificed and saved your entire life. And now finally you're here. You're either retired or close to retiring. And if you're wondering what to do with your retirement savings, you're not alone. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you 5 genius ways that retirees report spending their money to improve their quality of retirement, their quality of life. And be sure to stay to the end because I'm going to share with you aggregate data overall. How do retirees spend their money? Not just to improve their quality of life, but just for day-to-day living. So let's jump into the first genius thing that retirees do to improve their retirement. And that is they invest in themselves, specifically for their health. You know, when we're working, we're busy, we don't have the free time. Often we're putting, if we have families, if we have kids, we're putting our kids' needs in front of our own, both from a time standpoint and from a financial standpoint. And for most of us close to retirement or in retirement, it's finally our time. We can focus on ourselves. We can spend both the time and the money to focus on our health. And if we lose our health, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how much money you've saved, you're likely not going to enjoy your retirement to the fullest. So that's the first genius way that retirees report spending their money. The second is also related to investing in themselves, but it's about their passions, it's about their hobbies, it's about learning. For some people, learning is one of their passions. And so it's about investing the time. You finally have the freedom and the time to pursue your passions. Many of us chose careers not only because we enjoyed the career, but because we knew we could make a living and we could provide for our families. Many folks enjoy music, or maybe there's a local not-for-profit in town. And you know, while the idea of being a professional musician may have been fun, the reality is very few people can do that and make a living. So now that you're retired, you can pursue those passions without worrying about how much they pay. Related to pursuing passions without worrying about pay, maybe there's a hobby that you always thought would be fun to have as a business. And when I mention to people about being an entrepreneur in retirement, folks are kind of surprised by that, but I can tell you some of the happiest retirees I know are folks that have a hobby business, that take 10, 20 hours a week or whatever amount of time that they want to put into it. In fact, 26% of all new businesses started in 2018 were people aged 55 to 64. And 13%, 1 in 8 of Americans between the ages of 55 and 64 actually started a hobby business. And believe it or not, 7%, 1 in 12 of all 65 to 74-year-olds started a new business in 2019. And as we get older, for many of us, the likelihood of our business succeeding actually goes up because we have that experience. So a founder who is 50 years old is almost 3 times more likely to be successful than somebody that starts a business in their 20s. So the odds become more in our favor. And you know, we don't have to raise venture capital. We don't have to set the world on fire with our business. It's really about having fun, enjoying the journey, and maybe making some profits along the way. Okay, let's keep going. So we talked about investing in yourself for health and your passions. The next genius thing that people do is they give themselves the freedom of peace of mind. And they do that by having an emergency fund or a cash flow fund so they don't have to put unexpected expenses on a credit card, right? Over half of Americans say that they could not pay an unexpected $1,000 bill, medical bill, car expense, something like that. And in retirement, you don't want to be worried about that. So even though long term your money's likely going to do better if it's invested, have 3 months worth of living expenses at the local bank. Now that you're retired, you don't have to worry about maybe having a year's worth of living expenses at your local bank in an emergency fund, because We don't have to worry about losing our jobs, which is one of the big reasons I tell people as we get older, yes, 3 months is good, 6 months is better, but as we get older, when we're still working, maybe even a year in an emergency fund is good so that you have the time to find the best next job for you. Well, you already have the best next job. You're retired and you get to spend your money how you want to do that. But I want you to have peace of mind. I don't want you to have to worry about, gee, there's $1,000 car expense you weren't expecting and you put it on the credit card and now you're in this trap of paying 20+% interest. Okay, the next one is a home improvement project. We might as well enjoy, if you own your home, enjoy the home that we're living in. The reality is things get worn down, things get dated, and many home improvement projects don't necessarily completely go away from a dollar standpoint. You know, if we put $1,000 into a project, maybe we can expect to get $700 or $800 back when we eventually sell our home. And for many folks, the highest likelihood return on investment are the simple things: replacing the carpet, having your walls painted, maybe some new colors. Maybe have a designer come in and think about what colors, what style of carpet, just to update things. Same thing with appliances, updating our appliances. And mea culpa, you know, I was resistant to this. We had black appliances in our house. And, you know, silver is now silver colored appliances. And so we upgraded, and while we were upgrading, we also got more energy efficient appliances. So we were able to enjoy some of the newer conveniences, right? The split door refrigerator with a bigger freezer, just nicer stuff that was more modern technology, maybe quieter, and we were able to save money on our energy bill, which offset the cost of that. Plus, it makes our home more valuable. So that's something that oftentimes people enjoy. And I think it's also important to look at the budget and say, you know, when it comes to home improvements, there's good, better, and best. And for many folks, the good, you know, the carpet, the paint, updating appliances, maybe painting the cupboards if they're not a color that's in style right now. Those are things that tend to give the house a nice facelift and allow you to enjoy living in that home, while you're also, hopefully, when the day comes to sell, you'll get most or at least some of that money back. Okay, a bonus. What are some other genius ways? And remember, I'm going to share with you how people spend expenses in retirement, but let me go through a couple bonuses first. And that is investing in relationships, investing in doing things with friends and family. Maybe you get invited on a trip with a friend to go to the East Coast and look at the fall colors. Well, you know, maybe the airfare is a little expensive. This would involve staying at a hotel, and you're like, do I really want to spend that money? I encourage you to say yes. You know, look at the budget, make sure you can afford it. But I encourage you to say yes as often as you can, because if you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? This is our time. This is our time now. So I want to encourage you to say yes when something sounds exciting, when it's a friend that is really either a really dear friend to you or it's somebody you'd like to be a close friend. I encourage you to say yes. Okay, I also encourage you to keep investing. As we get closer to retirement, there's some rules of thumb that really encourage people to get very conservative, and nothing I'm sharing today is financial advice, but I just want to encourage you, many of us are going to have 20 plus years in retirement, and one of our biggest enemies is inflation. We often think of our biggest enemy as stock market volatility, the market going up and down. But I would argue that long-term, inflation is our biggest enemy, and compounding can be our biggest friend. As long as we're receiving returns greater than inflation, compounding works for us. But if we're receiving returns less than inflation, compounding works against us. So I encourage you to work with a financial professional and think about what the right asset allocation is for you, what percent of your portfolio should be invested in stocks, things that have growth potential versus bonds, things that will give you a decent income and hopefully provide stability, as well as having money in local bank accounts so that you have those three buckets. But let's make time our friend, not our enemy, by trying to beat inflation. Okay, so now I promised to share, what does the average retiree expense graph look like? So about 50% of a retiree's expenses go to paying for housing. So things like mortgage or rent, things like utilities, things like that, it's 47%. The second biggest one, surprisingly, is at 14%, which is medical expenses. Now, many of us think once we get to Medicare, we're going to be okay and we won't have big medical expenses. I do want to caution you, Fidelity put out a report. And Fidelity is one of the largest custodians where people keep their 401ks and their investment accounts. Fidelity put out a study that said the average 65-year-old for one person can expect to pay $157,000 after the age of 65 for medical costs that are not going to be covered by Medicare. So our co-pays, things that are not covered, etc. Our Medicare premiums, things like that. So for a couple, that's a little over $300,000. So the number one expense for retirees at about 50%, 47% is housing. The second one is medical, followed closely behind that at 13% for food. That would include things like going out to eat as well. Then 12% for transportation. And one of the reasons transportation tends to be higher is people, Americans in particular, like to buy newer cars, like to buy more expensive cars and have a car payment. I think for a lot of people, one of the least sacrificial ways to be able to cut back on our expenses is to buy a nice used car as opposed to a new car. I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just sharing as a financial advisor. I've seen that people can be very happy buying a nice used car. So that's transportation at 12%. Then believe it or not, recreation, things like hobbies, things like going out with friends, that's only 5% of the average retiree's budget. Frankly, I'd like to see that higher, but that's for me personally. I'm hoping that I'll be spending more than 5% on recreation, things that bring me joy. And then the other category is about 10%. So that's the visual pie chart of how retirees are spending their money. If you're curious about what the average retiree's income is, I made a video on that, the average income for retirees in America. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.